What would you do if the voice of the Almighty came to you with a command that would wound your heart before it ever healed it? In the days when the northern kingdom of Israel shimmered with outward success, when markets overflowed and soldiers boasted of expanded borders under King Jeroboam II, a deeper sickness crept beneath the surface. The vineyards were heavy with grapes, the olive presses groaned with abundance, and caravans crossed the land with spices and fine cloth. But in the shadows of prosperity, the soul of the nation was decaying. The people had not rejected the Lord outright. They had done something far more dangerous. They had divided their loyalty. On the hilltops, incense drifted upward to carved idols. At rustic shrines they bowed before the image of Baal, the fertility god of the Canaanites, whispering prayers for rain and harvest. Then, with the same lips, they entered the courts of the Lord, offering sacrifices as though nothing had changed. In their minds, devotion had become flexible. The covenant was no longer sacred, it was optional. Into this divided world, the word of the Lord came to a young prophet named Hosea, son of Beeri. The command was not about kings or battles. It was not about foreign alliances or temple reforms. It was personal, painfully personal. "Go," the Lord said, "and take for yourself a wife who will be unfaithful. Have children with her, for the land is guilty of the vilest adultery in departing from me." In ancient Israel, the relationship between God and his people was not described as a treaty between ruler and subjects. It was described as a marriage. The Lord was the husband. Israel was his bride. He had rescued her from Egypt, clothed her, fed her in the wilderness, brought her into a land flowing with milk and honey. He had loved her with a steadfast love, and she had run into the arms of other gods. So when God told Hosea to marry a woman who would break his heart, it was not a metaphor, it was a calling. The prophet would not merely speak God's message, he would live it. His home would become a living parable. His marriage would echo the grief of heaven. Her name was Gomer, daughter of Diblaim. Hosea obeyed. He did not argue. He did not demand an easier assignment. He stepped forward in faith and entered into covenant with a woman whose future God had already revealed. He chose to love her fully, knowing that love would not be returned in equal measure. At first, their home felt ordinary. Morning light spilled across the threshold as Gomer ground grain for bread. Hosea walked the fields, speaking the word of the Lord when called. In the evenings, oil lamps flickered softly while they shared quiet meals. There were moments, tender, fragile moments, when it seemed possible that love might rewrite the future. Then Gomer conceived and bore a son. In Israel, a child's name was never casual. It was a declaration, a prophecy, a banner raised over a life. And the Lord told Hosea what this child must be called. "Name him Jezreel." The name carried weight. Jezreel was a valley, fertile, beautiful, but it was also a place stained with blood. Generations earlier, violence and ambition had flowed through that valley. A dynasty had risen through bloodshed. Now, through this infant boy, God announced that judgment would again visit the house of Israel. Each time Hosea lifted his son into his arms and whispered, "Jezreel," he felt the tremor of that prophecy. The name was a reminder that the kingdom's glory was temporary. Justice was coming. After Jezreel's birth, something in Gomer began to shift. Restlessness crept in her eyes. The rhythm of home felt confining. The quiet steadiness of Hosea's love no longer satisfied whatever hunger stirred within her. She began to drift, first in her heart, then in her steps. She conceived again and bore a daughter. This time the script of Scripture grows subtly quieter. The text does not emphasize Hosea's fatherhood as it had before. A shadow of uncertainty hangs over the child's origin, but Hosea received her nonetheless. The Lord spoke again, "Call her Lo Ruhamah," not loved.
The name fell like a stone into the household. Every time Hosea called his daughter in from the courtyard, every time he spoke her name over her small sleeping form, he proclaimed a painful truth. The Lord would withdraw his compassion from the northern kingdom. The people who presumed upon his mercy would feel its absence. Yet Hosea did not withhold affection from the child. He fed her, held her, soothed her cries. Even as the name declared judgment over a nation, the father's arms declared care. Then Gomer conceived a third time and bore a son. Again, the silence in the wording suggests distance. Again, Hosea stood at the edge of mystery and pain. And again, God named the child. Call him Lo-Ami, not my people. The covenant formula given at Sinai, "I will be your God and you will be my people," now reversed itself in that small boy's name. It was a thunderclap disguised as a whisper. 3 children filled the house: Jezreel, Lo-Ruhamah, Lo-Ami. Hosea rose each morning and spoke their names. Prophecy lived at his dinner table. Judgment echoed through his courtyard. And still he remained faithful. But Gomer's heart wandered further. In Israel, a husband provided grain, oil, wool, and linen for his household. These were not mere goods. They were signs of covenant faithfulness. Yet Gomer began to say that her lovers had given her these things. She credited other men for the provision that had flowed from Hosea's hands. She left the house openly. She pursued men who promised excitement, indulgence, and flattery. She believed their gifts were better. She convinced herself that freedom lay beyond the boundaries of covenant. What Gomer did to Hosea mirrored what Israel did to God. The nation looked at fertile fields and said Baal had sent the rain. They tasted sweet wine and praised idols carved by their own hands. They forgot the one who had formed them. Hosea's pleas fell on deaf ears. Words could not reach Gomer's heart, and heaven's pleas echoed the same grief. Yet the Lord declared that he would not let her run forever. "I will hedge up her way with thorns," he said. "I will wall her in so that she cannot find her paths." Like a shepherd building a barrier of thorn bushes around his flock at night, God would place obstacles in Gomer's pursuit, not to destroy her, but to protect her from destruction. Her lovers began to fail her. Promises turned hollow. Invitations grew scarce. The thrill faded. For a moment, desperation drove her back. "I will return to my husband. It was better for me then than now." She came home, not out of repentance, but out of necessity. Hosea received her. The door opened. The children stared with cautious hope. But the return was shallow. The hunger in her heart had not been healed. Soon she left again, this time further, deeper. The grain ran out. The gifts disappeared. Debts mounted. Those who once desired her cast her aside when she had nothing left to offer. In ancient Israel, when a person could not repay what they owed, there was one final step: slavery. Gomer descended to the lowest rung of society. Stripped of status, stripped of security, she stood on a slave block in a public market. Men examined her like livestock. Bids were considered. Her name meant nothing there. Her past meant nothing. She was property. And into that marketplace the word of the Lord came again to Hosea. Go, show love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves Israel. Again. Not from a distance, not in theory, in action. Hosea went himself. The marketplace buzzed with commerce. Animals brayed, merchants shouted. And there, among the enslaved, stood the woman who had once shared his table. Time and hardship had etched lines into her face. Pride had been replaced with exhaustion. She did not look like the bride he had taken home years before. He could have turned away. He could have let justice speak. He could have said she was reaping what she had sown.
Instead, he stepped forward. 15 shekels of silver, a measure and a half of barley, everything he could gather, the price of a slave, about 30 shekels in total value. He paid. The transaction was complete. The gavel of commerce fell. She was his again. When Gomer looked up and saw Hosea, she did not see fury in his eyes. She saw resolve. "You will live with me many days," he told her gently but firmly. "You will not give yourself to another, and I will be faithful to you." He did not pretend nothing had happened. Trust would need rebuilding. In ancient custom, a restored marriage often required a season of restraint, a time for healing before intimacy returned. But he brought her home. The children watched as their mother crossed the threshold once more. The house that had echoed with absence began to breathe again. Through Hosea's obedience, God spoke beyond that single family. The names would not remain as they were. Lo Rahama, not loved, would be called Rahama, loved. Lo Ami, not my people, would be called Ami, my people. I will have compassion on the one I called not loved, the Lord declared, and I will say to those called not my people, you are my people, and they will say, you are my God. He went further still. She will no longer call me master, she will call me husband. The word for master in Hebrew sounded like the name of Baal. God would not share his title with an idol. He did not want forced obedience. He desired covenant intimacy. Hosea's marriage became a living prophecy. Yet the nation did not heed it. Warnings turned into reality when the empire of Assyria rose like a storm from the east. Under King Shalmaneser V, the armies marched. They surrounded Samaria. For 3 years the city endured siege. Hunger crept through its streets. Fear filled its gates. Finally, it fell. The northern kingdom was shattered. The people were carried away into exile. The throne was emptied. The sanctuaries were silenced. The land mourned. Hosea lived the message before it unfolded. His broken marriage had been a warning. His purchase at the slave market had been a glimpse of mercy. Israel went into exile without a redeemer stepping forward in that generation. But the story did not end in ashes. The name Jezreel, which had once signaled bloodshed, also meant God plants or God sows. The Lord promised that one day he would plant his people again. The scattering would not be final. The covenant would not be forgotten. In the latter days, he said, they will return and seek the Lord their God. They will come trembling to his goodness. Hosea's life whispered a truth that would echo through centuries. Love that pursues the unfaithful. Love that pays the price of redemption. Love that changes names and restores identity. In a dusty marketplace, a husband bought back his bride. In time, on another hill outside Jerusalem, a greater price would be paid, silver exchanged for betrayal, a life given for the unworthy. The pattern was already written in Hosea's tears. God does not merely command faithfulness, he demonstrates it. He does not abandon his covenant when it is broken from the other side. He moves towards the broken one, even when that brokenness is self-inflicted. From Gomer's fall, we see the illusion of freedom apart from God. The world promises pleasure and autonomy. It delivers chains. From Hosea's obedience, we see the heart of the Lord, a heart that refuses to give up, a heart that stands in the marketplace of shame and says, "I will pay." And from the children whose names were changed, we learn that judgment is not God's final word. Identity can be rewritten by mercy. Not loved becomes loved. Not my people becomes my people. And the one who might have remained distant chooses instead to be called husband. The story of Hosea is not merely ancient history, it is a window into the heart of God, a heart that grieves, that disciplines, that restores, and that loves beyond reason. Even when his people wander, even when they forget, even when they stand in chains, he comes, he pays, he brings them home.